The little girl had not spoken her mother's name in 327 days. Not when the seasons changed. Not when her father burned the toast the way he always did. Not even when she found the lavender scarf still hanging behind the bedroom door, holding the faintest trace of perfume that refused to fade. But on that gray afternoon, in the quiet corner of a crowded park cafe, she did something that made her widowed father's heart stop beating for a moment. And it all began with a simple question. Can I sit here? Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when strangers choose compassion, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach the hearts that need them most. The widowed father's name was Daniel Harper, 38 years old, software engineer. Exhausted soul, he had once been the kind of man who laughed loudly, who planned surprise weekend trips, who believed life unfolded in generous chapters. But grief had edited him down to survival mode. His wife, Emily, had died in a car accident one rainy November evening. One minute she was on her way home from picking up groceries. The next minute Daniel was staring at a hospital corridor wall that felt too white, too sterile, too permanent. Since then, life had become a series of careful steps taken on fragile ground. He now lived for one person alone, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily had inherited her mother's eyes and her father's silence. She used to be a whirlwind of questions and laughter. After the accident, she folded into herself like a paper crane caught in rain. She still went to school. She still ate dinner. She still brushed her hair before bed. But she no longer sang. Daniel tried everything. Therapy, weekend outings, movie nights, baking disasters that ended in flour-covered kitchens. But the house remained heavy, as if grief had weight and settled into the walls. That afternoon, they had come to the park because Lily's teacher had suggested gentle exposure to joyful spaces. The park cafe overlooked a small pond where ducks floated lazily and children fed them crumbs. It was supposed to be peaceful. Daniel chose a table near the edge, slightly away from the noise. Lily sat across from him, legs swinging under the chair, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the wooden table. She stared at the water but seemed to be looking through it rather than at it. He watched her the way fathers watch fragile things carefully, anxiously, with hope wrapped in fear. That was when the shadow of a wheelchair stopped beside their table. Daniel looked up. The woman sitting in it appeared to be in her mid-30s. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, and a thin scar traced down one side of her temple. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, fingers lightly curled. There was something steady about her gaze, not pitying, not demanding, just quietly present. The cafe was crowded. Only one chair at Daniel's table was empty. "Can I sit here?" she asked gently. For a second, Daniel hesitated. He wasn't unkind, just protective. He had grown wary of conversations that began with sympathy and ended in awkward silence. But Lily looked up, and something unusual flickered in her eyes, curiosity. Daniel nodded. The woman maneuvered her wheelchair carefully and settled at the table. She introduced herself as Clara. She explained that she often came to the park to sketch by the pond because the ducks didn't judge her drawings. She said it lightly, with a small smile. Daniel gave a polite smile in return. He expected Lily to withdraw, to turn away the way she often did when strangers entered their space. But Lily didn't. Instead, she stared at the wheels. Clara noticed. She didn't flinch or rush to explain. She simply followed Lily's gaze and said softly that the wheels were a little scratched because she liked racing downhill too fast. It was a joke, subtle, playful, and for the first time in months, a tiny sound escaped Lily's lips. Not quite laughter, but close. Daniel's breath caught. Clara began talking about the ducks, about how one of them always tried to steal food from the others. She described it as if narrating a dramatic soap opera. Lily leaned forward slightly. Daniel watched the transformation like someone witnessing the first crack of sunlight after a year of rain. Then Clara asked Lily what her favorite animal was. Silence. Daniel's chest tightened. He was used to this moment, the freeze, the retreat. But Clara waited, not impatiently, not with expectation. She simply waited, her gaze soft and steady. Finally, Lily whispered, "Butterflies." It was barely audible, but it was there. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Clara smiled and said, "Butterflies were brave because they had to completely change before they could fly." She said sometimes change felt scary and uncomfortable, like being stuck inside a cocoon, but it didn't mean you were broken. It meant you were becoming. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know whether Clara realized how precisely her words cut into his reality. As the afternoon stretched on, the conversation unfolded gently. Clara revealed she had once been a marathon runner before an accident left her paralyzed from the waist down. She spoke of it without bitterness. She described the early months, the anger, the disbelief, the loneliness. She described learning to sit again, to balance again, to exist again in a body that felt unfamiliar. Daniel listened, feeling his own grief mirrored in a different form. Loss had reshaped them both. Then it happened. A small boy ran past their table too quickly, his backpack swinging wide. It knocked against Clara's wheelchair. The impact was minor, but the sudden jolt startled Lily. Her eyes widened. Her breathing quickened. Daniel recognized the signs immediately, the panic that sometimes crept in without warning since the accident. Before he could reach for her, Lily stood up, and instead of shrinking away, she moved around the table and gently placed her hands on the side of Clara's wheelchair. She steadied it. The gesture was instinctive, protective. Daniel froze. Lily looked at Clara with concern, not fear, not confusion. Concern. It was the first time since her mother's death that Lily had responded to someone else's vulnerability with action instead of retreat. Clara placed her hand over Lily's and thanked her softly. And then Lily did something that made Daniel's throat close with emotion. She leaned forward and hugged Clara. It wasn't a long embrace. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Daniel turned his face away for a moment, overwhelmed. He had worried that grief had locked his daughter's heart away permanently. But here she was, opening it for a stranger. In that quiet hug, something fragile and beautiful shifted. The three of them remained there until the sky began to dim. Before leaving, Clara handed Lily a small folded piece of paper, a quick sketch of a butterfly she had drawn while they talked. The wings were uneven, imperfect, but strong. Daniel thanked her more sincerely than he could express. Over the next few weeks, they returned to the park. Not every day, but often. And more often than coincidence would allow, Clara was there too. They began sitting together intentionally. Daniel learned that Clara worked remotely as an illustrator. Lily learned that wheelchairs could be decorated with stickers. Soon, bright butterfly decals appeared along the rims of Clara's wheels, Lily's idea. Slowly, Daniel felt his own guarded heart thaw. Clara never tried to replace Emily's memory. She never offered cliches about moving on. Instead, she listened when Daniel spoke about his late wife. She asked about Emily's favorite flowers. She remembered small details. One evening, as the sun painted the pond gold, Lily did something else unexpected. She placed her small hand into Daniel's and then into Clara's, linking them together without ceremony. There was no announcement, no grand explanation, just a child deciding that two broken adults deserved to stand and sit side by side. Daniel looked at Clara. Clara looked at Daniel. Neither of them rushed the moment. They simply allowed it. Months passed. The house began to feel lighter. Lily started humming again while drawing butterflies at the kitchen table. Daniel found himself laughing, not forced, but genuine laughter that surprised him. Clara became a steady presence, not as a replacement, but as a new chapter. One night, Lily brought out her mother's lavender scarf. Daniel's heart stuttered. Instead of crying, Lily draped it gently over Clara's shoulders and said it matched her eyes. Daniel braced himself for a wave of guilt, for betrayal. But what he felt instead was peace. Grief had not been erased. Emily was still woven into every memory. But love, Daniel realized, was not a limited resource. It did not disappear when shared again. It expanded. Clara did not heal them by fixing what was broken. She healed them by sitting down, by asking a simple question, by choosing presence. And Lily, brave, quiet Lily, reminded them both that the heart can relearn how to open, even after unimaginable loss. If this story touched your heart in any way, please take a moment right now to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of compassion. And before this story ends, I have one special request for you. Comment the word butterfly below if you believe that even after the darkest seasons, transformation is possible. Because sometimes, healing doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it rolls quietly to your table, looks you in the eyes, and asks, "Can I sit here?" And sometimes that is enough to change everything.